So, welcome back to First Principles for Women in STEM, where we're really looking at like first principles around coaching yourself and personal and professional growth, and what are the fundamentals that you need to know in order to make growth easier. And today, what we're going to focus on is thinking of yourself and how to practically become the observer of your thoughts and feelings. I'm also going to talk to you about why that's important, like why do we care, and how to do the work of it, and also what the results you'll create at the end of that journey of doing that work. What changes in our lives when we do it. So we all feel like our thoughts and feelings are running the show sometimes. It's like they're controlling us or it's happening to us. It feels very automatic. Our thoughts come up, our feelings come up. We can feel like it's very out of our control. But when we start to consider the possibility and the truth of being the observer of our thoughts and feelings, a lot can change for us. Um, so we start to see like the chatter that's going on in our brain as not you that's speaking, right? But that it's a part of you. And also like how our feelings can take us on like a roller coaster ride during our day. We start to see them, we're observing it versus it being who we are. Like I am overwhelmed versus I'm feeling overwhelmed today. They're not you, but a part of you. So it's like detaching ourselves from them in a healthy way that supports us to be more grounded in our lives. So if it feels like your thoughts and feelings are like who you are, right? It's there's ways that we can start to see that we are the observer. um, and there's this other part of us that's really observing our thoughts and our feelings. And if you've done any meditation at all, um, even if I know for a lot of my clients, it doesn't feel like a very, our minds tend to be very busy. So it's like meditation may not feel like a great fit for us. But if you've done any of it at all, it's like just observing those thoughts as they go across your mind, or with your feelings, it's like just observing the feelings that you're having and learning how to process them. And I wanted to touch on first about why this is so important. Because we can kind of get this intellectually, but when we really believe it and we really start to do the work of it, it can completely change our lives. So, what I want you to consider is sort of the reasons why it's so important is when you identify with your thoughts and feelings, then you go up and down with them. And you don't feel like you're choosing them. It feels like they're happening to you, and it can feel very automatic and that it's not a choice. And then we feel like we're out of control, like we don't have any levers to pull, right? But when you become the observer, we start to give ourselves some opportunity to choose what we focus on and like choose whether that's a thought and feeling that we want to take that road and go down. Um, so what I like, I love to use analogies, and the one I like to use here is around thinking of it as like thinking of your thoughts and feelings as a movie that you're watching. So like you're on the couch. Oh, I forgot about my slides here. Um, so you're not your thoughts, you're not your feelings, you are the observer of your thoughts and feelings. And so in the analogy where your thoughts and feelings are like a movie that you're watching, and you're over here, you're the observer, you're like on the couch. And when you're feeling like they are you, it's like the feeling that you get when you're like really immersed in a movie and you're really feeling everything that the characters are feeling. And I joke with my partner all the time because I'm like, I have to remind myself that I'm like sitting on the couch with my husband in these moments when I'm like freaking out. Or like I was just watching Ted Lasso last night, and I talk about the characters as if they're real people, and then I catch myself, right? So it's like the same kind of concept, that it's like we can be so immersed in it, we don't realize that it's like it's something that we're watching, that we're observing. And so I love this analogy. And it's even a great way to practice. I often talk to my clients about this, about like if they're having emotions that they're afraid of, right, is to like watch a movie that's really sad, and bring all that stuff up for you. Practice what it feels like. I had that happen once about a client that was feeling scared, and she's like, "But I love scary movies." I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." Um, right. So it's this idea that we're really the observer of our thoughts and our feelings. And when you step back as the observer, you're watching the movie unfold, right? Then you can like choose what to focus on. You can pause, or you can even change your perspective on the story, or think about it differently, or turn it off, right? You're no longer controlled by what's happening in the plot. You can decide how you want to engage with it, right? When you remember that you're sitting on the couch and you're watching versus feeling so immersed. Um, so I love that analogy just to get the sense of it. And then, right. So then some of the other reasons, I think the next thing, some of the other reasons are that it helps us to really step out of like the, I like to think of it, it's much more complicated than this if you're a neuroscientist, but I like to bucket it into like the parts of us that are more interested in survival or short term, and the parts of us that are more interested in long term, and not so much like our survival side. So more cognitive, planning, deliberate, um, imagination, visioning, those parts of us. And then we can start to live from those different places and choose more. And this is why a lot of us feel like we're in survival mode all the time, and that it's not an option. It's just because that's the program that we've been running. And, but there's actually this whole other part of you that you just may not have access to yet, or as much that you would like, right? So when we start to practice this positioning of ourselves as observer, we start to notice like, oh, these are like my survival thoughts. These are my thoughts that are more like proactive and deliberate and long-term thinking. And then you can decide which direction you want to go in. Okay, so then how do we do this? So there's many choices about how we can do this. And so what I did was there's all these different tools that you can use in order to practice this. And so I just wanted to run through them, and there's no right or wrong here. One isn't better than the other. Um, they're all equally valuable. And what I actually recommend is just to choose one, and start working with it, and just pick based on what feels easiest. And if nothing feels easiest, or if it's difficult to decide, I would just pick journaling. So I'm going to go through them. So the first one is to pause. So when when you have a moment where you're feeling like a deep emotion about something, is just take a moment before you react and give yourself some breathing space, to feel that vibration in your body, or notice the thought that's coming up for you. And it's just like giving yourself some space to pause around the thought and the feeling as observer. It will do wonders. Number two is to reflect. So you can ask yourself, what's really going on here? What am I feeling and why? What am I thinking about creating this feeling that's creating this feeling? So you can do some reflection. You can just acknowledge yourself, name the emotion, say it out loud, say the thought out loud. I feel angry. I feel sad. I don't know what I'm doing, right? Like different, whatever it is, just acknowledge and see it as, when you do that, you position yourself as observer. That's what all of these will do. The next one, number four, is to capture. So you can write down your thoughts and feelings. This is the journaling option. Write it down, do a thought download, do a model that we talked about previously, um, and just slow things down, just capture them, right? You don't have to do anything, but you in that same space, you position yourself as observer. Number five is transform. So you can start to ask questions about your thoughts and feelings, like how will this matter in a month? To give yourself some perspective, or what am I learning here? How can I see this differently? Number six is to identify you so you can notice the thought, like really identify what the emotion is in your body and what that vibration feels like. It's like describing it. So is my heart racing? Is my stomach sinking? Is it a burning sensation? All of these are negative emotions. You can also feel joy or desire, that can all different things can come up in different ways. So just identifying it for yourself, bringing some granularity into your emotional world is extremely valuable to create the position of observer. Number seven is to comprehend. So create some understanding. You can do this with models. Um, you can just notice that thoughts and emotions are temporary. Like if I'm feeling this way, it's going to be in my body for a certain amount of time, and then it's going to leave, as long as I don't keep that spiral loop going with the thought and the feeling. um, this can really help us to create some compassion for ourselves and understanding. And then number eight is examine. So look at the situation with curiosity, what's beneath the surface of the thought and the feeling. You can ask questions like, what do I need? How can I give myself what I need here? How can I ask for what I need if that's necessary? And the more that we examine the thoughts and feelings and identify more of our needs and fulfill those needs, what I've found in my experience and my experience with my clients is that over time, we, by fulfilling those needs for ourselves or asking for what we need, we, the, those triggers come up less. It happens less. Um, okay. So, oh, and it's a nice little mnemonic of practice. And that's exactly what we have to do. And it really doesn't matter. You can see how there's overlaying aspects here too, right? So it really doesn't matter which one you choose, but what matters is to choose one and work with it. And like I said, if I was going to choose one, if you're like, the default one is to just do some journaling about how you're feeling every day. And you can even, what I find, a common question that I get actually is like, what if I'm having these emotions at work and I don't have time? I have to like go about my day. I don't have time to like sit down and do a reflection and understand more about how I'm feeling. That's often something that comes up for people. And in the beginning, I would just offer to take a note of it. And then when you have your time for reflection, when you create that time for yourself, whether that's once a day or once a week, you can just return to it and like rehearse it and use one of these tools to do that. And that will make all the difference. That's exactly what I did when I first started. Um, okay. So then I want to give you like a taste of what changes. So, what really changes is a few different things. How we can start to be able to respond instead of react when we're the observer. We are more sort of consistent and stable instead of the roller coaster when we're the observer, and we can make better decisions as the observer. We can really more closely align our lives with what we actually want to create when we are the observer and we're deciding how we want to think and feel. And instead of going through the roller coaster of emotions. And we also have a ton more time and a ton more energy because we're not using it in these ways. So I'm going to run through some of those just to share with you. So what changes? So for example, going from reacting to responding. So this is my little drawing of like having um this happened to me this summer, so I'll tell you this story, which was I had a phone call. I never usually answer my phone, but for whatever reason, I answered my phone because I think I thought it was someone specific. It was not that person. It was a person that was very upset with me and yelling at me because I had made a mistake. And I was completely unaware of the mistake. But this is what was happening in my body was a shame spiral of me really feeling like a burning sensation, which is how shame shows up for me through my body. And in the past, for me, shame would be like hang up the phone, run away immediately. I would barely be able to get anything out of my mouth at all, if anything. And just as a little sidebar, what I actually find here is like I I never experienced this because my life was set up to avoid it. So that's another benefit, right? Is that the life, once you develop the skill, the life that you lead will have more risk in it, but you will know that you can handle it now. And you're less scared of the shame and those strong emotions, uncomfortable emotions. And so the life you lead will be bigger. So that's just an aside. Because like 8 years ago, I was not experiencing shame because I wasn't living a life that put me at risk of shame, right? Okay. So what happens is as we sort of create this awareness and become the observer, instead of running away, we start to and reacting in that way, right? We start to be able to like hold it in one hand, which is literally what it felt like when I did it was like I felt like I was holding space for myself, but then I was still free to speak to this person. I was like, this is amazing after this experience. Um, and I could actually say things like, "Can you say more? What do you need here?" And I was able to give her like a heartfelt apology because I understood what was happening. And in the end, she actually apologized to me for being so harsh in her first interactions with me. So being able to show up in the world so that you can hold space for yourself, be experiencing this emotion, and then be able to interact with other humans while you're doing that. That's where this work leads. Okay. Really super worthwhile. As a leader, this is it. It's totally what's needed to be able to be in that space. What else changes is so love a graph. This is it's not real data, but this is like what your emotional energy looks like when you identify with your thoughts and emotions versus being the observer. So your emotional energy becomes more stable versus feeling like you're on this roller coaster throughout your day from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. So, like, kids come in the room, they're all charged up, you get charged up, right? Or your partner at the end of the day has a really bad day and he's feeling anxious about his presentation tomorrow or her presentation tomorrow, then you go with them, right? Because you're not observing it, you're in it. Um, and actually, empathy is a whole other thing, which I will talk about, but it's not for today. And then, so what happens when you start to become the observer is you're not going up and down. You're just noticing, and then you're like, oh, that's happening. And then you can continue on in your day. And I will say, like, you'll still, like, this is sort of it's ongoing, right? Like there'll still be times where you know you get some bad news or something or like something unexpected, and but you'll still be able to be with it so much more easily, right? Like so you might have that, but you normalize, you adjust more quickly. um so that's what happens on your day to day. Like instead of the roller coaster, you feel more like you're just driving through your day. There's not so many ups and downs. What else changes is when we look at this kind of emotional energy, like the thoughts creating our emotions and that energy over time, when we look at it over weeks, months, years, instead of just a day, right? What happens is instead of like a stop and go experience, we have more of a constant experience. Instead of being inconsistent, we're more consistent because we're not reacting, right? In and because all of this emotional energy is ahead of our behavior. We're in the when we are identifying with our thoughts and feelings, we are more exhausted with less to show for it. So if you look at the area under the curve, right, there's more than here. And also the activation, the cost of energy going up and down, right, is higher versus this constant. And so we have less decision, we make less decisions because we don't feel like we're in a good place to make a decision and we're more stuck. And overall, I don't know if you can see this, um, we have less results overall and we feel less aligned with like what we actually want because we've taken these actions, but they've been up here or over here or over here, and it's not necessarily what we actually really truly wanted, which is more of that long term type of thinking. And so what changes is that we become more constant, we're more consistent, we have energy to spare and more to show for it because we've taken more action, because we have more energy. That's a common thing that I hear from my clients is like at the end of the day, they just don't have any energy. And that's because we've been doing this. If we're more constant over the whole day, like at the end of the day, you still have energy um, to show up for your family life and your friends and whatever's happening personally, right? Um, we make more better decisions, and that creates momentum in our lives. Then we're moving, then we're taking action, and we get more aligned results because we're making more decisions from that place of our long-term thinking versus our immediate survival based thinking. And survival, there's nothing wrong with survival based thinking. I always give the example of like when I'm standing on the side of the road, I want my, and cars are whizzing past, I want my survival based thinking. And there are times when I want that part of me. But if you're not the observer, then you until you really connect with being the observer, you're not choosing whether you're in that mode or other modes. And so this is really one of the first steps to be able to do that. Okay. So the lab work. We're going to choose one tool to become the observer. Okay. Doesn't matter which one. Then we're going to commit to it and track using it for, you get to decide, 7, 30, 60 days. Then we're going to notice and record the data about what is changing for you. And then you're going to share it. You can share it with me in the comments or with others. You can email me or DM me on LinkedIn. And just notice what happens when you become the observer. And really, when you do this, you increase your awareness and your abilities to support yourself no matter what is going on outside of you. And this is like the ultimate freedom. So the next time you feel your thoughts swirling or your emotions rising, try to use one of those practice tools. And you're going to work on becoming the observer by practicing the tools that place you as the observer of your thoughts and feelings and getting to know those parts of you. What are they telling you? What's serving you? What's not serving you? And as you do that, you're going to become more constant. You're not going to be going up and down as much because you're not identifying with your thoughts and feelings, it becomes easier to respond and you'll make better decisions that feel more aligned with what you want long term instead of feeling like you're in survival mode all the time. And when you do this, you'll create more space so that you can respond instead of react. It's going to completely change your life. And I can't wait to hear what happens for you. So looking forward to our next session, and I'll talk to you then.